We're live. I am joined with Biochemistry PhD. What's her name again?
Justin, it's
Okay,
fun.
right. So we debated before unsaturated fat. Um, I was the one who made the proposition that time. This time, you just wanted to debate me on veganism. We had to iron things out a little last night, but I think we agreed to a basic proposition. Why don't you just outline your argument and then we'll just go from there?
Okay. Yeah, I mean the substance of it is just I want to first clear the air and say I'm not trying to talk anyone out of being vegan. I have no problem with vegans. I think it's a perfectly valid choice. I'm simply arguing the moral superiority of that compared to some alternative choices. So my basic premise is that animal welfare should be the basis for any moral argument around what people choose to eat. You have to choose something. And my fundamental argument is that we should be aiming to reduce the total amount of harm, suffering, death, whatever, to animal populations. And that, every human activity doesn't really matter what you choose to eat, where you choose to live, what kind of transportation you choose to use. You're going to harm and kill animals either directly or indirectly, no matter what those choices are. And so in my mind, that eliminates any claim of any dietary choice being better in an absolute sense than any other dietary choice because we're effectively down to a numbers game. Which one causes the most harm? And every human lives their life knowing, or I guess ignoring if they want to, knowing that them being alive and being happy and comfortable harms animals in very serious ways, either direct or indirect. And so if you go to a grocery store and you buy plant products. Those plants were harvested out of a field where most likely massive pieces of equipment weighing tens of thousands of pounds went through crushing animals under their tires, smashing the burrows of animals that live in holes under the soil, owned by farmers who intentionally kill and poison and blow up and shoot rodents and other predators, or not predators, herbivores that destroy their crops. And you pay them money to do that. And so you're complicit in the whole activity. And if you buy factory farmed meat, I completely agree, way worse because then you have to raise a bunch of crops way more than it would take to feed a human to raise the animal, and then you're slaughtering that animal too. That's even worse. Alternatively, you could buy meat, which is where I get the vast majority of my meat from a local farmer who raises cows on open pasture, no large equipment, no factory farming. They live a perfectly fine life until they are, slaughtered and butchered at the end of that life. But we didn't have to run over and destroy a bunch of small mammals along the way. We didn't have to spray pesticides and poison a bunch of fields full of crops. And I think that the number of calories that I can get out of that one cow and kill one animal is morally superior than someone who's vegan but is buying their produce and plants from a store, killing many more small animals along the way, causing more harm and more damage. Um, that is the fundamental crux of my argument is that there is no moral superiority because everyone is complicit in animal harm, and so it's a matter of quantity.
Right. So I can agree with the basic idea that there are going to be circumstances where a vegan diet may possibly lead to more animal deaths than either some form of mixed diet or some source of animal products or meat. The issue I have is I see a fundamental difference between incidental deaths in agriculture or through transportation. I think you linked me one research paper on the amount of animals that are killed just through like crop transportation, like roadkill or something.
Not even just crop transportation, but
Well,
just
just
human.
roadkill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think my point there is like if I decide to kill a cow, I put that cow in my freezer, it feeds me for several years probably. It's an enormous amount of meat. If you decide that there's a cool concert that you want to go to a couple hundred miles away and you kill a squirrel with your car on the way there, I don't think that makes you any worse than me because you go out in your car knowing that that's a likely outcome if you drive enough miles.
Right. So I
I
don't
have a
think you
better
believe
reason
that.
for it. Okay, explain.
Well, I think you would see a clear moral distinction here. So let's say you have two possible worlds. You have a world where 10 million people died in the Holocaust, and you have a world where 10 million people die in transportation. So the Holocaust world, no one ever dies in transportation. They still have cars, but they develop some sort of technology where no one ever died in a traffic accident. And you have another world where there was no Holocaust of 10 million people, but 10 million total people die in transportation. Which world is morally preferable to you?
I completely agree with you that the transportation world is preferable, but I don't think they're comparable scenarios, right?
Well,
And the
they are.
reason for that, they're not, because if transportation by vehicle or plane or train or whatever it was involved driving through areas where there were crowds of blind people wandering around, and you just accepted that you were going to kill a bunch of blind people by transporting yourself from point A to point B, we would outlaw that form of transportation and nobody would accept it as morally valid. But we know that humans are no better and they don't want to wander around in the middle of the street. Animals aren't smart enough to avoid that, and you've decided that that means you don't have to care about them and will mow them over.
There are humans that die in traffic accidents all the time, often through no one's fault. There are people, like, there are just extremely hazardous road conditions.
Right, but we're
Um,
all complicit in that and we understand the risks. Animals don't understand the risk.
okay.
And you know that they're going to get killed, and you know that it's
Well,
not their
I
fault.
mean, no one goes into their car thinking they're gonna die today. Like, no one walks across the road
Oh, no,
thinking
they do. My
somebody's
wife
gonna
does
run them
every day.
over.
She has horrible anxiety about car crashes.
Yeah,
My
well,
my
like
point is,
I don't like it's just, well, it's kind of strange to me how you're saying murdering like cows on an industrial scale is equivalent to like a rabbit getting run over
okay,
by a
let's
car.
shift it then. The people that you buy your produce from, you buy vegetables, grains, whatever in a grocery store. The farmers who supply that food, they kill animals intentionally to keep them out of their fields. I know they do because I've seen it. They shoot them, they poison them, they blow up their burrows
Well,
to
so
keep
do,
groundhogs.
yeah, so do people in animal agriculture.
I know, so I'm saying they're equivalent. There's no superiority in buying
Right.
plants because animals are being harmed intentionally to raise those plants
Well,
and harvest them.
what I'm saying is, like, you're pointing out this circumstance where, okay, people intentionally kill animals to protect their crops.
Mhm.
People kill animals intentionally to protect their livestock.
I know.
So,
I'm not saying that livestock farming is superior. I'm saying that they're equal, they're equivalent, and there is no moral superiority.
well, they
They're on an
wouldn't be
equal.
equivalent because one involves murder on an industrial scale, the other doesn't. So you
No, I
have,
disagree. Is murder on an industrial scale. If you go through your field where you're planting crops and you spread rodenticides, poisons that kill rodents, that is murder on an industrial scale, and you buy food from those people. You're supporting that industry.
yeah, the difference here is you're breeding animals for the purpose of murdering them on an industrial scale. Plus, you are also intentionally murdering animals to protect that, like, that livestock so that it can grow and then you can make a profit off of. Whereas in the case of plant agriculture, you're just protecting your property. So, like, again, from a vegan ethical worldview, if we were to trait equalize human beings to animals, if there were some form of like retarded human that was wandering around and would just like eat your crops, we'd be fine with using poisons to kill off those humans to protect that resource. So I don't see how these two are morally equivalent. Like, if we
Whoa,
were
whoa,
to make
whoa.
them morally equivalent and equalize
You
the
completely lost
situations,
me. You completely lost me with the disabled person. Nobody would shoot them. You'd go to prison for murder. You would
no, we're
call
talking about
people.
a hypothetical world where there's like some race of humans that are like mentally retarded and there's like millions of them, and the only way to protect a vital resource like food, like growing corn or soybeans or something, was to use some sort of poison to like to prevent those weird retarded humans from eating
I
up all
think
the
it,
corn and soybeans, we
see,
would be
I think
totally fine
you're,
with that.
I think that's disingenuous because you say an entire race of human, which I'm not sure what that means exactly, but
So like
you're
black
effectively
people only
creating,
like retarded and they eat corn or something and they're like flying insects, only like human.
then they're not human anymore.
Well, yeah,
And
they
so
would
it's
be.
the
They'd have the cluster genetics that would classify them as Homo sapien.
Um, no, I mean, so in the biological species concept, you classify a species based on whether the populations regularly reproduce with each other. And so you're basically
They don't
taking,
have to regularly reproduce. They just have to, like, again, the standard definition when you're talking about species that sexually reproduce.
so you're imagining some mutant form of human. The only way that they can exist as a separate population is if they don't reproduce with other humans. Otherwise, they wouldn't be maintained as a separate population. You're imagining an
No,
animal.
no, you don't have to regulate. Like black people aren't a different race of human being, but we know that people from a certain area bred with each other and not outsiders, which is why they have really dark skin. So, like, no, they're not a different, like, species of human just because they have black skin. We're imagining a race of human beings that pretty much only breed with each other and they're all fucking retarded and they all have this ravenous love for eating corn and soybeans in farm fields.
Yeah, if it boiled down to like my survival, if it's like, okay, I either let them ravage my crops or I starve to death, then of course, yeah, I would shoot them and protect my food source. Anyone would, if it's that or
Yeah,
die.
so
Of
that's
course.
right. So, again, the
Yeah.
idea of veganism is to grant the same rights to animals that we would to human beings if they were to be
But
trade
no,
equalized. So, you agree with me? There's
no,
a clear moral distinction here between a
no,
holocaust where
because
you round up people and turn them into hamburgers versus protecting a food resource like corn or soybeans.
okay, so if let's compare. If I buy, let's say that I have enough money that I buy an apartment complex, but I decide I don't really want it to be an apartment complex anymore, right? And I come in with bulldozers and I mow over, I basically crush the buildings to the ground while the residents are still inside because I want to turn it into something else. That's illegal. We would call that murder. If I buy a forest and decide I want to turn it into a cornfield, if I go through, cut down the trees, grind them to pieces, kill all the animals that are in those treetops while I do it, nobody calls that murder. And that is exactly what the farmers who you buy your produce from did. So how are you saying you're giving animals the same rights? We're okay with
Yeah,
crushing them and taking the land.
yeah. So first of all, have you ever seen homeless encampments getting bulldozed?
They don't kill the people.
Yeah, you know why? Because even homeless crack addicts are smart enough to leave when they see the bulldozers. So if homeless crack addicts are smart enough to figure out they should leave when bulldozers come, guess what? Squirrels and birds also figure that too.
Do you understand in ecology that the most fundamental principle in the entire field is that of competition? And if you remove habitat, but the number of individuals stays the same, you're spreading the resources more thinly, and some of them will starve to
Not
death.
necessarily.
Even, then no, 100%. Talk to anyone who's an ecologist.
Not necessarily. It may benefit certain species over others, which may be good. Like
So
again,
you think if the number
I don't
stays,
like the idea of coyotes ripping apart like little rabbits. So if making a cornfield gets rid of a lot of coyotes and rabbits are advantaged by that, then I don't see how that's a moral bad.
because then the rabbit population explodes to the point where they destroy their food source and basically rape the land of all the plants, and then they
I
start.
am highly skeptical of the idea that, in general, predatory animals have any substantive effect on population control. Highly skeptical. Um,
Everyone in the field that you're describing disagrees with you, and I can send you 100 resources.
I like maybe that's the case, but I'm highly skeptical of the idea. There's a number of reasons why. First of all,
Um,
there's very
research
few
that
predators versus herbivores in a given
that
population.
because only approximately 10% of biomass gets transmitted from one level of a food chain to the next
Yeah,
because
so
of inefficient heat loss, right? So go and
yeah,
look up
so
Yellowstone, fantastic
I
example. Wolves were hunted to extinction and then they were brought back.
what
The
was
change
hunted
in
to
predator
extinction?
wolves. in Yellowstone, and then they were later reintroduced.
Well, yeah, they were reintroduced, and they had absolutely no benefit.
Not if you take away predators, herbivore populations explode. It
They don't.
increases transmission of disease.
That didn't happen with Yellowstone.
You think that if you take away a predator, that their prey species doesn't increase in number.
It's funny you say that because that's exactly what happened with Yellowstone. What they found was wolves had absolutely no effect on elk populations. It was actually human poaching that had any substantive effect, because humans are able to kill much larger amounts of elk, and they particularly target elk that are going to be especially successful with breeding.
All
Um,
right.
so it's funny you mentioned that example in particular because that's the example that would prove my point.
So do you hold the wolf morally responsible for killing the elk?
Well, I would argue that wolves don't have the kind of moral agency that human beings do, so I don't know exactly what you mean by that. Like, they are the agent that kills the elk, but I like if we could hold them on like put them on trial. I don't see what the point would be going through some sort of like court system and holding them guilty for murder because
But you
they
say
just
that you
don't
want to
have
grant.
the agency to like choose.
I agree with you. So, but when you say that you want to trait equalize humans and animals, I guess I still you can't do that though. Humans and animals don't have the same capacity. How can you equalize their traits? That's why we don't hold animals responsible for things like that. It's not murder. It's just them finding food. And so, like,
Well,
I guess I don't really understand.
we're trait equalizing to see if that theory, that moral theory of animals getting granted human rights if they were to be trait equalized to humans holds. If there is an example where we would deny animal rights, even if they were to be trait equalized to humans, or it would be impossible to trait equalize them to humans in some way, because there's like I don't know, some unique trait of human beings that animals couldn't possibly have, then that would disprove the moral theory. So if we can create these hypotheticals like the retarded humans that eat corn, and then we come to the conclusion that yeah, even if human beings were doing this, we'd still use pesticides, then that just like it just it gives credence to the moral theory. Like
I
you did agree, like yeah, if human beings were doing this, we'd still use pesticides. I don't
I
see a moral
still
issue
don't
there.
see how that shows any moral superiority to being vegan, though. Like, how does that support that argument?
If the idea of veganism is to grant human rights to animals if they were to be trade equalized to humans, and you agree, yeah, we would do this to human beings in a circumstance like pesticide. That proves there's no internal inconsistency with the moral theory.
Okay, if you were starving to death and your only chance of survival, like you knew you were going to be without food for multiple months, and your only chance to survive was to kill someone else and eat them, would you do it?
Like a human being?
Yeah,
Depends on the human. Like if it was you, sure.
just random, yeah, yeah, random person you don't know.
Do they eat meat?
Does it matter?
Yeah. Yeah, if they were vegan, then I wouldn't want to do that. If they ate meat, then sure. Fuck them.
Okay, so if we're trait equalizing, then what if I eat carnivores? What if I eat carnivorous animals? Because if trait
Yeah, I don't have a
equalized, you
problem
would
with
eat
that.
a carnivorous human. Okay, so you have no problem with me eating lions or tigers.
Yeah, if you're actually hunting wild lions and tigers, yeah, go for it. That'd save deer and elk and shit. I'd also have no
Okay.
problem with you killing and eating Nazis. Like, it'd technically violate the Geneva Convention, but,
Okay.
you know,
And what about, so if it was a deer, what if a deer gets hit by, what if a vegan drives their car down my road, hits a deer and kills it? Can I eat the deer since it's already dead?
yeah, like again, if you hit a human being, I wouldn't care. Like in a vacuum, if we didn't care about like I don't know, like if we didn't have this like weird social standard of keeping bodies intact or something, Like I don't care. They're dead. You can't harm
Yeah, I
them.
don't particularly care either. So just to be
Like the only
clear,
thing I'd be concerned with is the family members who may want, the person's corpse intact. Like I can
okay, so
understand you may like there may be a moral basis for keeping a corpse intact and not mutilating and eating corpses because family members would care. I don't
okay,
know if a dear family gives a shit if I can assume they probably don't really and they just see them as dead, so whatever.
so just to
So
be clear, for the sake of consistency, if a predatory animal like a wolf kills a deer, you don't hold it responsible because they don't know the difference, right?
well, what do you mean by hold it responsible?
You wouldn't punish the wolf in any way.
Well, ideally I'd kill the wolf so it wouldn't kill other animals.
Okay, just out of curiosity, do you I mean, in a zoology context, insects are animals and they have nervous systems. Do you consider insects animals that we have to care about?
Um I
They
mean,
respond to
well,
they're
sure, from like
but
well, sure, same principle would apply. I'm assuming at least some insects are sentient. Like there's pretty clear
okay.
indication that bees are sentient. I don't know if like mites are
So
sentient,
so if
but
we consider every animal species on Earth to be a predator that eats insects, you realize you have to wipe out like the vast majority of like almost every mammal,
well,
most
a lot of
every bird.
insect, yeah, so a lot of insect species are predatory themselves. So,
And
like dragonflies eat
or
mosquitoes,
animals.
but mosquitoes kill a massive amount of human beings. So, even
Right.
though dragonflies are carnivorous, because they're killing a carnivore or a species that causes a mass amount of deaths, I don't have a problem with dragonflies. Same like I don't know, in a human analogy, well, Americans are killing Nazis. I don't just I'm not against Americans killing Nazis because Nazis kill innocent people. So I'm
Okay.
in favor of killing in that circumstance because it results in less killing
So
or
I'm just
less killing
if
that I
you
care about.
if you want to kill animals that eat other animals, again, an enormous number of mammals, almost every bird, most fish, right? Basically every whale that exists, you're gonna kill all of them to extinction?
I didn't say I was going to.
You would favor that.
I would say in circumstances where it reduced rights violations, then yeah, I'd be in favor of it.
Okay. But you buying produce from a farmer who you know is going to clear cut land, destroy habitat, and kill a bunch of animals in the process to raise your lettuce is cool.
Yeah, so the issue there is one, I don't necessarily agree with the idea that just creating farmland will end up killing more animals. There's a number of reasons why I'd think so. So, for one, they can just move. If a bulldozer comes, squirrels, birds, what have you, they leave. They do also live in cornfields, and they do use things like cornfields or soybean fields or whatever as cover from predators. Like it is the case. So there are still
Un-
animals that are moving around
Until
and
the
running in
machinery
there.
goes
So
through,
I
until
don't
the machinery
it doesn't just wipe out all the animals living in that area. It's just not true.
be
Secondly,
installed. It's so unbelievably nice.
wait. Secondly, I also the like animals also kill and eat each other. We just talked about how like insects kill and eat other insects, animals kill other animals, blah blah blah. Well, in all likelihood, chances are, if we have more human habitation, there's very likely less overall suffering and death in a square mile of cornfield or square mile of city versus a square mile of untouched wilderness. So if
Why?
there's less rights violations going on there,
Wait,
then
wait,
I
wait,
would
wait.
be in
Why?
favor of more human habitation. Why wouldn't I
Have
be?
you ever have just curiosity, have you ever actually spent any significant amount of time on a functioning farm?
Well, I live in a very farmy area. I've never
You,
worked on a farm.
okay. I have. Do you know what happens once the crops reach maturity? They don't just have this happy, peaceful existence. The crops reach maturity, massive pieces of farm equipment come through, harvest those crops, basically destroy it, remove the cover, and then all the
Yeah,
animals that have had that as a food source, most of them fucking starve because then you just took away their food. And now you've made a huge population of animals, you've removed their food source, you're leading them into winter, and they starve to death and die. It's not this happy utopia that you're imagining. You're just telling yourself that to feel better.
Okay. Even if we grant all of that, what's the issue?
The issue is if I go to my guy John down the road who raises my cows for me, I can cause a very, very minimal amount of suffering for an enormous amount of food. When you go and buy your plants from a grocery store, you're causing way more death and suffering by honestly way more torturous means because starving to death is so much worse than just getting shot once. And I think that you cause more damage than my method.
Okay, so should we have shot and killed everybody with COVID?
I don't need to eat them. That's an irrelevant argument.
Well, again, you're saying things like like getting shot in the head is better than starving to death. Like, so is dying of like some horrible disease. So should we have like, if we knew who was going to die of COVID, should we have just shot them to death? Would that be the morally better
Are
outcome?
competent enough to
Like, should
understand
we
what's
have
happening.
firebombed the Chinese wet market and the surrounding area to prevent the spread of COVID? Because roughly 7 million people, possibly as many as like 13 million, died from COVID. So if we had just firebombed, one little area of China where maybe a couple 100,000 people died, we could have prevented up to 17 million, sorry, up to 13 million deaths. So
Okay, but
is
you can
is
as many
is
unrealistic
is is firebombing 200,000 people better than letting 13 million people die,
you
like
haven't
through spread
established
of
why
disease?
you haven't established why you would need to firebomb 200,000 people. If that was the only way to stop it, maybe,
Well,
but
it's
you
it's
haven't.
assumed in the Well, it's assumed in the hypothetical. So in the hypothetical, we're assuming the firebombing would have prevented the spread of COVID, and let's just say, let's give the middle of the road figure: 7 million people wouldn't die. Like, would we be in favor of murdering 200,000 people to
How is
prevent the
this relevant?
spread of a disease that ended up killing 7 million people?
How is this relevant? We're not even talking
Well,
about
it's relevant because we're
anything.
making a distinction between like some sort of large scale planned murder versus like an animal incidentally getting killed through farm equipment
Okay,
or
but
incidentally
but
getting killed through like starving because like the cornfield was collected.
I think the point in all this that you're missing is I'm not calling you a bad person. I have no problem with you buying your plants at the grocery store. I'm just saying you're not better than me.
Oh no, I'm better than you.
I know that you think that, but I'm showing you through a very clear argument that some of your behaviors cause more harm than
Well,
some of
look,
my
you even
behaviors.
know that I'm
Where
better than you. You basically conceded to these points. Like, we were talking about a different example earlier, where we're talking about like hypothetical worlds where there's a Holocaust versus there's a equal amount of people who die through a car accident. Like, we do make a moral distinction
no, no, no.
between the types of
That's
murder
not
that
a relevant
we
comparison.
do make a moral distinction between the types of
You
deaths that occur.
you
So
you
when you're
don't
talking
because
about
humans.
murdering millions of animals in a planned industrial manner through like industrial agriculture
The
versus
reason your
industrial
comparison
plant
doesn't work.
agriculture, there's clearly a moral distinction.
Do humans knowingly participate in the risk of transportation?
It doesn't. Well, there are some that don't. Do children have like the ability to willingly participate in these things? Kids die in
Well, we
car
don't, we don't
accidents.
grant children full agency because we've decided that they're not mature enough to make their own decisions. My point is, animals don't knowingly
So
participate in the
you're
activity of.
so I'm sorry. Like, there are in fact some people who don't willingly participate, like children. So they don't have the agency to really understand these sorts of risks. So again, there are people who put their kid on the back of their motorcycle. Driving a motorcycle is far more dangerous than driving a car. A kid
Sure.
will think, "Ooh, motorcycle, yeah, take me with you, dad." So parents run like put their kid in that sort of risk, and a child doesn't understand that risk. So we're accepting there are in fact human beings in society that don't willingly participate in these sorts of things, but we still are okay with it.
Dude, I know, I agree with you. What you're missing is I'm not saying that farming plants is wrong. I'm saying it's not morally superior. You're not
Well,
making
it
an
clearly
argument
is,
for
and
how
you
it's
agree
morally
with me.
superior. You can try to put words in my
You
mouth if you
literally
want.
already agreed with me. You acknowledge there is a moral distinction between large scale industrial slaughter of sentient beings and these incidental deaths that occur through protecting a
I don't believe
resource.
that it's incidental. I
Sorry?
disagree with the comparison. I disagree that it's incidental. It is not incidental. It's planned, it's on purpose, and everyone knows it's happening. That's
Well,
not incidental.
so first of all, no one goes through a crop field thinking, let's try to like run over a rabbit. No one does that. It is
But you know it's
incidental.
going to happen. Okay,
Well,
so
you
if
don't
I
know
had
if
a
it's going to
vegan,
happen. It may
if
not
I have a
happen. Like it depends on the size of farm. It depends on what animals are living there. It depends if they get it out of the way. So, can you prove to me on every single farm that has ever had industrial farm equipment run through it, a rabbit died or a ground squirrel died?
yes,
Uh, uh,
yes, I
how
can.
would you be? How would you have the ability to do that? It's statistics. You can prove on average, like something like I don't know, 1.2 or 1.7. I don't know.
Okay,
Rabbits get run over, but you
okay.
can't prove on every single farm everywhere. Some
Can I
I like
respond?
even if we could grant that, we
Okay,
accept that sort of risk for human beings.
you asked me a question. Can I respond?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. when when you dig up soil in a farm in a field, which I have done, a plow goes through, big metal blade, slices the ground open, right? You can see the density at which animals live underground. Moles, voles, rabbits, groundhogs. The density is enormous. It's equivalent, it's actually even higher than the density of humans in a suburban neighborhood. If I took a tank, some gigantic,
I would.
can I finish?
Yeah.
I drive that tank through the human neighborhood and say, I didn't mean to kill anyone. This is just what I enjoy doing. I'm just having a good time. Some people happen to be in their houses. If I drive for enough miles, I am guaranteed to crush people and kill them. When you drive a tractor through a field, even for a relatively short distance, the density of animals under that soil is so high that it is a certainty that you are killing them. It's a certainty. And they also do it on purpose. I have seen a man drop a stick of dynamite in a groundhog burrow and blow them up to get them off of his farm. The people that you buy your food from do that on purpose and you pay them to do it. And you don't care because you don't see it. And because
Yeah,
you don't see it, you
I
pretend
don't
like you
care.
care.
I don't care because I'd be fine with doing this to human beings if they were trade equalized. If we were dealing with human beings that lived below ground, that dug little human mole hills and ate away at the crops that I was producing, and there was no way to communicate with them. Hey, could you stop doing that and move over to the other town and maybe eat this instead of my cornfield? If we're dealing with retarded human beings that lived below ground and were destroying our crops, we'd be fine with killing human beings.
Okay. So just to
So,
clarify, you have
would
no
would
problem
you be
killing
okay?
animals.
Sorry, would you be okay with killing retarded human beings that acted like moles to protect your cornfield?
I, I disagree that they would be humans at that point, but if that was my what my survival depended on, sure.
Then you clearly agree there is in fact a moral distinction here.
Well, I guess what I'm
So,
like
so
trying to
let's.
understand.
Well, I let you talk for a little bit. Let me just share this idea with you. So let's say you have two circumstances. You have a group of retarded human beings that you are breeding, that are about as intelligent and sentient as a cow, and you're forcibly breeding them. You're letting them graze on grass because that's what they eat, and maybe occasionally you have to give them, grain or something. Like let's just equalize it to a normal like cow farm, and then you take these retards, you put them on a transportation truck, you bring them to a slaughterhouse. They're hung upside down, shot in the head with a bolt gun, chopped up, turned into steaks and hamburgers. And you have another situation where you are growing corn, but you have retarded humans living below ground that are like moles. You have retarded human beings that are kind of like insects and they kind of eat away at the plant, so you need to use pesticides to deal with them. And you have like random retarded human beings that hop around like rabbits and they use the cornfield for cover for predatory animals that might kill and eat them. And you going through the cornfield for harvest and all the other work you have to do in the field, you end up incidentally killing, those retarded human beings. Which situation is morally preferable?
I think that they're on a person by person or animal by animal basis. I think they're equivalent.
You think they're equivalent?
Yes, I do.
So
I think that example, in my example, I killed one animal to eat it. You killed a bunch of animals because you want some plants that they are living around. In either case, we killed animals to get our food. I don't see the difference.
you're okay. So then, like, you'd have to bite the bullet on like a ridiculous situation, like the Holocaust versus equal amount of people who end up dying through car accidents.
I know I fundamentally disagree with that because the Holocaust had no purpose other than just harm and hate.
Okay, well,
The,
let's say the Holocaust was to eat Holocaust victims. It was for food, so like making Soylent Green.
did the people that committed the Holocaust, did they have to kill humans to live one way or another? They had no choice. One way or another, humans were going to die for them to survive, and they had no way around it.
Well, are you? Well, I don't know why that would be a relevant detail because you could
Because
live as a
that's our
vegan.
situation. We have to eat something. You and I both have to eat
Right,
something.
and you could just eat
No
like
choice.
tofu and potatoes like I do.
Right, but the Holocaust, there was a choice. You didn't have to commit the Holocaust. There was no reason why you had to do it. It was a choice,
Right,
voluntary.
and
But
Hitler
not
also didn't
perfect.
have to eat fucking Wiener Schnitzel.
I
I
have to eat something.
sorry.
So if I have to eat something, I need calories to survive. And so if I eat
Yes.
the cow, or if I kill a bunch of small animals so I can eat the plants, I have to make that choice. The Holocaust was not an either or. You didn't have to do one or the other, and so it's not a comparable situation.
Well, it absolutely is because again, in the hypothetical I introduced, that they're doing it for food. So
If it's
they
for
could have.
food, if
So
it's
they
for food,
and again, I like that's not even relevant either because the hypothetical that I proposed was you choosing two different worlds. One
no,
world
here's
where 10 million people die in the Holocaust, one world where 10 million people die in transit. Like, if you're literally going to tell me that, oh, well, we accept these deaths, we know they're going to happen, so therefore deaths are morally equivalent,
what,
then that
no,
would
you're
apply in that situation too.
just be honest with me for a second. Where's the necessity? We have to eat. We don't have the
Well, the
Holocaust.
necessity is in it's in the hypothetical. There's two worlds that
No,
you
no,
can
no.
choose
There's
from.
no necessity. You have not shown me why
No,
it's necessary.
the necessity is implied in the hypothetical. There's two worlds that you
No.
can choose, or you do a coin
That- that-
flip.
okay,
So
you
one
put a
world you choose the Holocaust world, one world you choose the car death world. Which is morally preferable?
dude, if you're going to make an analogous situation to compare to our what are we going to eat? We have to eat something, right? Transportation versus Holocaust. There's no, oh, we have to do one or the other. You can just choose no Holocaust. You need to give me an example where
Not
you're
in the
forced to.
hypothetical I proposed.
That's why your hypothetical is irrelevant. It's not
No,
comparable.
no, it's not irrelevant. There are two worlds that you can choose. You can choose the
But you don't
Holocaust
have
world,
to
or
choose
you
one.
can choose the car death world.
I'm not backing down on this one. In our version of this, plants versus animals, you have to choose one to eat or you'll die.
Yes, and there's a certain world that you have to choose. So
There's
again,
a certain world.
we have to eat something. We can either eat plants or animals. And
Okay.
in the
So,
hypothetical I'm proposing, you have to choose one world to exist, to come into existence. The
but
Holocaust
not
world
for a
or the
reason.
car death world? What is morally preferable?
But you haven't established a reason why we have to choose, and that's the foundation of the ethics. You've just
The
said,
reason
here
why
we
you
go.
have to
We have to
choose
have
is
one.
because one world is going to be made in the hypothetical. So you have to choose which world. It's either Holocaust, car death world, or coin flip because to you they're morally equivalent.
Dude, I hope everyone watches this understands you are not comparing an apples to apples
Yes, I
situation.
am. Yes, I am. So, world we live in right now, we have to choose to either eat plants or eat animals. In the hypothetical, you have to choose Holocaust world or car death world. So they are morally equivalent. We're talking about
Okay.
two
But
situations in which we know deaths are going to occur. Which deaths are we more okay with?
but we agree in the food choice, we have to do it to survive. If you don't eat something, you die. So in your situation, are you saying if someone doesn't Holocaust people, they die?
No, I'm saying no. I'm making the point where we've already accepted the idea that we want to exist, right? So if we've already accepted the idea we want to exist, then in the hypothetical I proposed, you want to exist, right? So a world has to be created and you have to choose which one. You have two choices: Holocaust
Okay.
world or car death world.
Right.
What
To
is
turn this
morally
back around the
preferable?
other, to turn this back around the other way, it would be like if I was saying that we were holocausting cows for no reason and we weren't going to eat them, I would agree that that's morally horrific because there's no reason, there's no justification for it. It's not comparable. I'm not saying holocaust cows for no reason. I'm saying it's a matter of survival.
Yes,
You
I,
have a
I, I
human
understand that we have an interest to survive. So given that interest, which deaths are we more okay with? Are we more okay with deaths in agriculture or are we more okay with deaths in animal agriculture? If you're going to say they're morally compatible, it's equal, the only decision that you're basing things on then therefore is the total amount of harm. The what I'm basically arguing against is like basically premise one in the syllogism we agreed on last night that we worked out, is that these sorts of deaths are morally equivalent. So what I'm trying to point out here with a hypothetical is that these deaths clearly aren't morally equivalent. If they were, then you just say, oh, well, between
just
Holocaust world and car death world, it's coin flip. My choice would be based off of the amount of actual deaths that occur or like total
the
harm
other
generated.
aspect of it,
And if you're
the
proposing a hypothetical where harm generated is equivalent, then it's a coin flip. Clearly, it isn't a coin flip because you're still uncomfortable with giving me an answer. So,
they're
which would you prefer, car death world or Holocaust world?
all right, just like 30 seconds, please. Like
Sure.
they're not comparable. In traffic deaths, people voluntarily choose to get in their cars and take on that risk. The animals that live in the fields that are being killed when they harvest plants are not choosing to take that risk. They're too stupid to understand the risk.
There are human beings that don't consent to that sort of risk, like children. So let's say in car death world, we're only talking about those that are non-consenting. So you have an
But
equivalent amount of
I,
children that
like,
die
you,
in car death world,
you
and you have
realize the
an
level of
equivalent amount of
distortion.
people that die
So
in Holocaust world. What do you choose?
if if one or the other is necessary for survival, then I think they're equal. Dead people are dead people. I don't
Okay.
really care how it happens.
Okay.
It's all the same.
So okay, so you literally believe that rounding up people on the basis of race, religion, political ideology, and gassing them to death is morally equivalent to choosing a world where no Holocaust ever happens, but an equivalent amount of children die in car accidents.
The the thing that you're missing is you would have to make it so that you force them to go on the road and you force them to take the
You do
risk.
force
I got
children to go on the road.
then yeah, I think it's equivalent. In both cases, you're
Okay.
forcing people against their will that end up dead. They're both wrong.
Okay. Okay,
I'm not
that's
saying one's good. I'm saying they're both wrong.
yeah. I would say that's just absolutely fucking ridiculous and silly.
I think that you going to some imaginary Holocaust world that's not even related is such intellectual contortionism that
So
that's as far as you have to
so
go
so
to try to make a point.
right. So
You're being
if you actually believe that, do you think all parents whose kids die in motorcycle accidents because they took their son on their Harley, they should be sentenced to the gas chamber?
No, because when a
That
parent puts a
then
child in a car
you
and goes
said they're
somewhere,
morally equivalent.
just answer. When someone puts their kid in a car and goes somewhere, there is a purpose and there's a benefit. They want to take them out and experience the world. In my hypothetical, I said people are forced to take the risk for no good reason. That's different. Animals are not being given an option. They're being
Well,
forced to take risk.
I literally just proposed a hypothetical where they just want to take their kids out on the Harley. So
Okay.
if you're gonna tell me, literally taking a 9 millimeter and blowing somebody's head off is morally equivalent to a dad taking his kid out on the Harley. You just told me those deaths are morally equivalent. So presumably you would be in favor of some sort of punishment for the murderer. Why wouldn't you be in favor of the same punishment for the dad? So either like life sentence, or if you're in favor of the death penalty, death penalty.
Yeah, I think if you put a child that's too young to consent on a motorcycle and crash it and kill it, I think you should go to prison. That's
Okay,
messed up.
same. So then, same with the car. Then, at least, like I don't know, like unless you could prove that, like I guess your argument would maybe hinge on whether there was some like useful utility where the interest was like in the child, like I don't know, bringing them to
Yeah.
daycare or
I
something.
I
Okay,
still
well
don't think
let's say they were going into a Ferrari just for like a fun ride. Like
but
again, presumably you'd be okay with sending a dad to the gas chamber.
my distinction is with the animals in the field, they didn't choose that situation. You forced it upon them. So
Right.
that the thing would be is if I took a father and I held him at gunpoint and said, "You have to take your kid on the motorcycle and you have to go drive," and then the kid dies, I'm responsible for that kid's death because I forced them into it. Animals aren't choosing. There's no agency here.
That's you're adding a weird layer to the hypothetical. The problem
To
is the
make it
kid
an
isn't choosing.
animal situation.
So in my hypothetical, the kid isn't choosing, the dad's choosing for him. Now you're adding in some extra layer where there's some criminal forcing the dad to force their kid on the motorcycle. Like what? I don't know what that does. So again, the so you are like biting the bullet. A dad who brings their kid on a Harley, and they end up incidentally crashing, even through no fault of their own. Let's say there was just some 18-year-old kid texting on their phone. They rear end the biker and the kid dies. You would hold the dad responsible?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's reckless endangerment. It's insane. And so, but my point is, like,
Right,
we, if we limit
You've
risk
said
to
these
live
deaths
life,
are morally equivalent. So me just assassinating somebody is morally equivalent to a dad taking his kid out on a Harley.
if the kid, like, again, the kid has to be like forced against their will,
Well,
and
again, we're assuming, well, like again, the assumption is they're not consenting. So I don't know what you mean by forced against their will. It's like that's why they're statutory rape. Even if they say yes, please fuck me, they don't have the cognitive ability to actually consent. Like they're easily manipulated.
dude,
So
I get.
like even you seem to be like, do I really have this like viewpoint? Like
No,
I think you're
I'm
recognizing how silly this is.
no, I'm recognizing how silly your analogy is, and I'm trying to square the two. What here? How about this? What if make it extreme? What if I said the father is taking their son for a walk through a war zone where bullets are being crossfired all day long, right? It's so extreme, death is almost certain. Then how do you feel? Because that's what's happening to those animals in the field. It's effectively a guarantee. It's a death sentence. It's not a maybe. It's not even a probably. It's like you know you're killing people. There's no maybe on the table.
Well, you're comparing the cornfield to the dad. That's not what I was doing. I was
I'm
comparing.
comparing the
So like,
farmer to
well, right. I don't
and
know how you could make that comparison. Like I would say that's a false analogy because I was
farmer goes to
comparing.
the field
So
knowing he's going
like
to.
look, I like we like before I was like I was saying there's a clear moral distinction between purposefully killing somebody, like to turn them into meat, versus some sort of unintentional death, like a car accident or motorcycle accident.
That's what I'm saying is
I
when it's to the point of effective certainty, like taking the kid for a walk through, through like Palestine during the worst of the IDF attack. Like that is the equivalent of going through the field with a giant farm equipment. You know that death is the most likely outcome. And you're saying, I don't care, I'm going to do it anyway. I think that's effectively murder.
Well, again, where like the disanalogy is we're making a comparison to industrialized slaughter versus, say, worst case scenario with a case of like pesticides or something, or hunting, I don't know, moles or whatever the fuck, groundhogs. uh, One, you're protecting a resource, whereas the other, you're just murdering to turn a sentient being
No.
into a resource. So, like again, the argument I made is these are clear moral distinctions, and
Okay. See,
you
I think
like,
the analogous thing would
and
be,
again,
okay, I
the,
think I thought of a good situation. I think this will work. All right. If you want to do the Holocaust thing, all right, let's say that person A kills a Jew and eats them. Nazi A kills a Jew, eats the Jew, right? Nazi B kills a Jewish shopkeeper so that they can eat all the plants inside their store.
I don't see how that you're talking
That's
about
the same
theft.
thing. You
No,
kill
it's
the
not.
cow
No, it's not.
or you
You're
kill the
talking
animals.
about theft. So a Jewish shopkeeper, that's his shop, that's his property, and that those are his goods that he is selling.
Okay,
A
before you
mole,
clear cut the land.
a mole, or a groundhog, or a rabbit, or a squirrel, or any bird living in the cornfield, the corn isn't their property.
It used to be before you clear cut it and turned it into
What
a
do you
cornfield.
mean it used to be?
That was their home. You destroyed it to turn
So
it into a field to
how?
grow your plant.
I'm sorry. Like, okay, well, now we have to get into an argument of ownership. Like,
Well, if we trait equalize humans to animals, don't you think animals have homes? Don't we respect their right to have a
well,
safe home?
I mean,
Oh,
human. There can be people living in, I don't know, the woods. So it's like okay, let's say there's a scenario
should
where
you
there's some
respect an
homeless
animal's home?
person. Let's say there's some scenario where some homeless person is living in the woods.
Mhm.
No one owns the woods. It's entirely
Most people
public
own
land.
forests.
Sorry?
Most of my property that I own is woods. People own woods.
Well, yeah, people. Well, now you're saying people own woods.
Okay.
So
My point is,
what are
you, you
so you
don't.
agree that human beings do have the ability for land ownership?
Yeah, I don't. Dude, I'm not the one that thinks humans and animals
If
should
you
treat
agree that
equally.
human beings have the ability for land ownership, then what are you arguing? You're saying it's theirs, but it's not theirs? That's just a
I'm calling
contradiction.
you inconsistent because you're the one that
Well,
thinks
no,
humans and animals.
you literally just contradicted yourself. You literally
No, no, no.
said animals
We're
own the woods, but they don't own the woods.
Dude, I'm not saying I think animals own the woods. I'm saying that under your
So
description of animals
humans
having
own the
equal rights.
woods, so it's our property. Okay, so then you can't say they own the woods. You are literally making an assertion and then negating it instantly.
Take a second to listen. I didn't say I think the animals own the woods. I'm saying you're talking like you think they should because you want animals to have
I
equal
never
rights.
said they should.
You didn't say animals should have equal rights to humans. Trait equalized equal
Yes,
rights.
trait equalized. I don't think mentally retarded people are capable of ownership.
And so,
When we're
all right.
talking about somebody who's so severely mentally disabled, they can't like if they literally cannot conceptualize the idea of land ownership, how
So
are they
you're
going
you
to own land?
okay, so you would be okay with killing mentally handicapped people and taking the land that they were existing on.
If it were being used for like good, so sorry, we need to lay out like hypotheticals a little more carefully, because like what do you mean by kill? Do you mean like go in with guns and just shoot like a bunch of Down syndrome people, or like are we
I'm
talking about
saying
if there happened to be humans that had like the equivalent intelligence of like squirrels living in the woods, and you needed to clear the woods and there's no way to communicate with these humans? Hey, this property is owned by X person, you need to leave by this date because we're clear cutting it. But because they have squirrel brains, you can't do that, and you just have to rely on them just leaving once they hear, clear cutting equipment. Then yeah, I'd be totally fine. with like just running the clear cutting equipment and everything.
Okay.
And if they
You know,
leave, they leave. If some of them die, that's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. There's no way to deal with these situations.
to be completely honest, I think we're kind of at a stalemate here because what it really boils down to is you think that raising animals and killing them to eat them is inherently inferior to doing things that you know is going to kill animals, but it wasn't really on purpose. It's just a statistical certainty. And I just disagree with you. I think they're the same thing.
Are
And so I don't know that we're
again,
debating
are
for
car crashes a statistical certainty?
um, again, people voluntarily
Well,
participate
not
in the
children.
death.
So children die in car accidents.
Right.
Are
And from a
child
legal
deaths in
standpoint,
car accidents a statistical certainty?
we treat parent and children as one entity. We don't treat children as legally separate identities or entities
Okay,
from.
well, now I don't know what the law has to do with this. So, like, your claim was that, well, it's okay because they consent to this, like, social standard. Children
We
can't.
allow parents to consent for their children.
The,
Legally, that's how it works.
well, I don't know why why you're saying legally. That doesn't matter. We're talking
Because
about morals,
you're trying to find a
not
loophole
current
and you're
legal
telling me that it's
status.
not valid.
Well, we're talking about current legal status. Like, if this were the 1700s, black people wouldn't have human rights. You can't just say, well, we don't recognize black people as human, so it's okay to enslave them because that's the legal standard. Like that
Okay, but
wouldn't be the argument you'd make. So
I know
we're
because
talking about
I think,
morals, not current legal status.
dude, I think that enslaving black people is morally indefensible. Do you think that parents having controlling rights over their children is morally indefensible?
No, it's morally that. I agree with that, but the claim you made was that it's these car accidents are okay because everyone involved in these situations consent to the social standard where we all assume the same risk. I
Right. And
just you just agreed that's not the
I
case
did.
because children exist, mentally disabled people
I,
exist.
I understand that, but we have given parents and caregivers de facto agency over children and the mentally handicapped. And so there is consent. It's just through the parent or the caregiver on behalf of that person. It's still consensual. And you're not getting around
Well,
it trying
no,
to
it's
interfere.
not consensual to the subject involved that cannot give consent.
Because
So,
we've
so,
decided
so,
that children,
I'm sorry. If a parent says it's okay for you to have sex with my kid, is that okay?
at that point, we deem the parent to not have the best interest of the child in mind, and we remove the consent and give it to someone else.
What do you mean? What do you mean? Remove the consent and give it to somebody else?
As is by default, when someone has a child, they get to grant consent for their child to do things, play a sport, go to school, do whatever. As soon as the
Right.
court decides that the parent doesn't have the best interest of the child in mind, we don't transfer consent to the kid, we transfer it to another adult. The kid never gets consent over their own life until they're 18.
We don't grant parents agency over their child simply because they have the best interest of the child in mind. They can do things that aren't in the best interest of their child, like take certain financial risks or put their kid in something that they have an interest in but their kid doesn't. So it's not just based off of best
Okay.
interest of the
My
child.
point is the
It's
entire thing.
basically just whatever is considered an acceptable social standard.
Okay.
But again,
My
like you're
point is
saying, well, it's
you're trying.
okay because the parent decides for the kid. Well, clearly there are decisions that the kid might not want or might not be beneficial for the kid, like riding on the back of a Harley or maybe driving in really like treacherous weather. Like a kid doesn't know any better. Like again, the point
Okay.
is the subject we're talking about, kids, they can't give
Make,
consent.
make it
So
comparable
if the
then.
kid can't give consent, you can't just say, "Oh, well, the parent consents for the kid." That's not how
Let's
that
make
works.
let's make it comparable. All right? You live on a small farm. You have fields. The animals that live there, right? They can't give consent, but you have de facto control over them because they're on your property. Do you have their best interest in mind when you drive a tractor through the field and crush them?
No,
No, you don't care about
I
them.
care. I care primarily about my cornfield.
Right. You care more about the plant than you do the animal.
Right, but we already
Well,
ran name the trade on this. We
yeah,
were
and I think that it's
even you were
absurd.
okay with mowing down humans that were trade equalized.
I'm not the one that's arguing that killing animals is wrong. I have no problem killing animals for a good reason.
Look, like let's run through the hypothetical again. So we have, let's replace all the animals, cows, chickens, pigs, rabbits, squirrels, birds, with humans that are trade equalized. So humans that have the same level of sentience, same level of cognitive capacity as those animals in those same situations, and these humans also live underground and they hide in cornfields. And these animals chew on, or sorry, these humans chew on grass like the cows.
They're not humans,
What
though.
is, well, yes, they are, because it's
So
assumed in the hypothetical. They are humans. They're just
you can
retarded
make silly
humans that
claims
chew on grass. They're retarded humans that live in cornfields underground. Who are, like, what scenario are we more okay with? Are we okay with mass slaughtering millions and millions of retards in a slaughterhouse? Or are we more okay with just killing these humans so that we can harvest corn?
right. All right.
Like, are you saying they're morally equivalent?
Here's what I want to do. I want to make sure that everyone
Well,
understands
answer my question. Are we saying they're morally equivalent?
what you're doing is you're taking the word human, you're changing
Are
the human to make them
are
so
we
fundamentally
saying they're
different
morally equivalent? It's yes or
that they're
no.
not really a human anymore. And
They
yet you
are
just think
human.
that
They are
no, they're not.
human. How do we define
Then
human?
you are so
How
impossibly
do we
ignorant of
define human?
biology.
Like, from my understanding, we're going by the normal biological definition, whatever has the cluster
What,
genetics of Homo sapien.
what is the biological definition of human?
Well,
The
whatever cluster genetics are required to be identified as Homo sapien.
term cluster genetics mean to you? I don't think you
Uh,
know what you're talking about.
who the fuck, like, whatever, whatever fucking biological definition you want to go by. So whatever
No.
genetic
Here's
makeup would identify somebody as Homo sapien, or like regular species definition, as long as you can have viable offspring. So they're
can I,
human. They're
all right,
human by whatever scientific definition we go by.
can I have 30 seconds? What you are proposing, you're taking a species saying their habitat changes, their food choices change, their behaviors change, everything about them changes. But oh, they're the same species. In biology, that doesn't happen. It's a non-existent scenario because if that many things change about
Well,
them,
it absolutely does happen. So, guess what? In Saudi Arabia, they eat a lot of dates. In northern territories, they eat a lot of fucking beluga whale or whatever the fuck
it
mammals they
does.
eat. So that does happen. Humans are diverse. They eat different things. They have different cultures. They have different
Live
languages.
under,
And in this case, these humans eat grass, and they're like really stupid.
dude, come on, be honest with yourself. You know this is absurd.
So now you're just dodging. What is the
No,
What is
you're
the logical problem with my hypothetical? Is there some
that
kind of contradiction? Is it
you're
internally
wanting
inconsistent?
you're wanting to what you're describing is a non-human animal, but
No, I'm
you want to
not.
keep them human. Yes, you are.
No,
No
I am
human
describing a mentally retarded human being that lives off grass.
has that ever happened before. Does that human exist anywhere?
Well, they may have at one point.
Uh,
There was apparently a human species that did live primarily off of grasses. So,
a human species. Do you know what the word species means? If it's different than if it's a different
so
species than human,
yeah,
genus,
let me
hominid,
let me
these
see
terms
what
that
it.
matter,
I don't know if it was in the
lives off of
genus
grass.
Homo. Generally speaking, if something is in the same genus, isn't it considered the same species technically?
Nope.
Um,
Um, Not even close.
I think generally speaking, that's usually the case.
That
Uh,
if everything in the same genus is the same species, what's the point of having the term species? It goes kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. They're
right,
hierarchies.
yeah. Well, I'm saying generally, if something's in the same genus, it's almost always the same species. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not an expert.
So unbelievably wrong that you failed by
Um, okay, it might not have So, yeah, I know for a fact there was a human ancestor that ate primarily off grass. I don't know if it was in the genus Homo, or if like modern humans could interbreed
In
with it.
order,
But
you
the
understand that,
point
like,
being that, like, we're going off track. The point being, what is the logical problem with the hypothetical? It's just a human that lives off grass and has the same mental capacity as a cow. Otherwise, human. It can
that's a
interbreed and
cow.
have offspring with normal human beings.
Okay, do you understand that if they were interbreeding, that their genetics would intermix, and pretty soon the entire
Well,
population
they
would be
yeah,
average of
so
all of them?
they aren't interbreeding.
Then they're
They
not
were
the same species.
isolated population. We found them on some island and we started breeding them for meat.
Okay,
So again,
yeah,
what is the logical problem with the hypothetical?
if because it's such an if you're saying they eat grass, they somehow live underground, maybe they're retarded. Yeah, they're not human anymore. Kill them. Go for
Well,
it.
they're well, okay, you're
You can call them human if you
wait,
want, but
wait,
they're
wait,
not.
wait, wait, wait. There's two. You're talking about a completely different thing here. So you said to me that you have this ethical framework of reducing animal harm. That could either be welfare, making them suffer less, or killing them less. So
Mhm.
that would be the morally superior option. So even if you're
Correct.
okay with killing these human beings for food, you would still presumably prefer an outcome that is like more preferable. So like again, is it more preferable to round up like on a mass industrial scale like these people or these animals and slaughter them, or is it more preferable to end up killing them to protect a like in the interest of protecting some other resource like corn or something?
If if the scenario that you're describing, where it's like this mass production thing, if you're describing factory farming, we're on the same page, man. I think it's gross. I despise factory farms. I think it's cruel and horrible. I really do. What
Sure.
I'm describing, the guy that I get my meat from, that cow lives about as happy and pampered of a life as you can possibly imagine, and it doesn't even really know the end came.
Well, I
So
don't think it's happy when it has a bullet gun shoved in its head and its throat gets slit open. But like again, it's just bizarre.
I,
Like it's bizarre to say that. Oh well, I treated my murder victim really well. So like again,
by your
you're not answering my question. Like, do you see these things as morally equivalent? So it like slaughter on an industrial scale where you like just perpetually breed these animals into existence and murder them,
let go
or
of,
a
I disagree with
circumstance
you.
where you end up killing them to protect some other resource.
What if we let go of the incidental, right? I kill the cow and eat
Well,
it.
I
The guy,
remove that because you have an issue with the incidental. Let's say we know a certain amount of them are going to die. We don't know exactly how much, but we can use statistics and we can figure out like a certain amount of them are going to die. So,
I genuinely mean it. I think they're morally equivalent because you're not giving me scenarios where it's
right. Okay.
involuntary.
So if you believe that's morally equivalent, then this should also apply to human beings. So again, the Holocaust
And if it's
versus Car World
involuntary,
example.
I
Like,
do because fuck, dude. All right, you round up 6 million Jews and kill them, or you drive tanks through Jewish neighborhoods until you accidentally run over 6 million Jews. Either way, yes, I think those are equivalent. That's the comparable
well,
scenario.
they're equivalent because they're the same. They're
Yeah.
they're
If the
literally
same
well, no,
scenario
no,
was,
you created literally the same scenario. You're just choosing a different method to
but
kill Jews.
I
A
created the
gas
same
chamber
scenario
versus
with,
getting run over by a tank. I don't know. Like running a tank through a neighborhood isn't in the service of protecting some sort of resource or utility you have.
what if it did?
This is again the comparable analogy would be killing 6 million Jews in the Holocaust versus like a comparable number of child deaths in road accidents, or like mentally disabled people, like people who like somebody who can't consent to the social standard of accepting some sort of risk with traffic accidents. So
And you're
are
forcing
you
them
saying
to
they're
do it for
morally
your benefit.
equivalent?
If you forced the mentally handicapped people to get in the car and take the risk for your own
Well,
benefit, then yes.
like again, what like when you say force, it's assumed you're forcing them because they aren't able to give any kind of informed consent. So it's not like you're
Right?
holding a gun to their head.
Right.
the
But
the
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 difference is,
idea is they cannot give consent. So anytime you put a child or a mentally disabled person in a car or on a motorcycle or any other vehicle, plane, they can't give
right.
consent.
But the driver of that car is also taking on risk. And they're saying, I think this is worth it. When you drive a tractor through a field, you're not taking any risk. You're putting 100% of the risk on the animal. They're not comparable situations. The
You're
driver takes the risk too.
well, what does that matter?
You're because
What matters is the subject that can't consent.
right. So I'm saying I agree that I will stay, it's equivalent if you say, hey, mentally handicapped person or kid, you have to get in the car without me. I'm not going to take any risk, but I'm going to force you to take the
I
risk.
don't know why it matters if the driver also takes the risk. The issue
Because
is the subject.
because in my scenario of crop deaths, the animal has no choice. The farmer imposes the risk upon them,
Sure,
and the
just
farmer
like with the
has no
driver.
risk himself.
Just like with the driver and the child.
No, because the driver
You're
also has risk.
like you're mentioning some aspect that is irrelevant. What's
Why?
relevant is the subject in question being the mentally disabled person or the child not being able to consent. Just
Okay,
because
let
the
me
driver also assumes a similar risk,
let me try to
that's not a
paint a
relevant detail.
okay. When a farmer harvests a field, the farmer has a benefit that they're going to get, right? The crop, correct?
Sure.
Is there any possible benefit to the animal of the crop being harvested? No. Farmer and you,
Well,
100% benefit.
I
Animal,
don't
zero
know.
benefit.
I don't know if that's necessarily the case.
Running them over and taking their food source. There's a benefit
Well,
there.
first of all, that wouldn't necessarily be their only food source. And even if you
If
do
they live
take
in
the.
the field, it's
Well,
sure.
wait. Even if you are taking their food source, well, if we didn't farm at all, they'd never have any food source whatsoever.
Yeah, so you're fattening them up just to starve them later. I know. So my point is
So
the
they
animal
could presumably survive and find
without a
another food source?
no, because crops get harvested seasonally and you take them all down at the same time. Jesus Christ. My point is,
Right?
in the car example, to make it analogous, you basically have to force the child and the parent or the handicapped person, whatever, in a car and say,
No, you
even though
don't.
you don't want to and you have no benefit, I'm going to force you to take this risk. You have to. That would be the comparable situation. And yes, I think that's basically murder if they die. That's on you because you forced them into it. Just like the
So,
farmer
first of
forced the
all,
animal.
because we're talking about children or mentally disabled people, it's assumed they're forced because they can't give consent. Just like again, statutory rape. It's called rape because there's no scenario where they could give consent. So
Right. But what I'm saying
I
is
don't like when you say that it's a little misleading because it's always assumed that
40,
they're forced.
no, it's not
And
comparable
again,
because
secondly, what matters is the subject in question, whether or not they're able to consent, not whether or not the person driving also partakes in a similar level of risk.
is there a potential benefit to a kid getting in a car and driving somewhere to have experiences and appreciate, enjoy the world around them? Is there a benefit on the table?
There could be.
Yes. Yes. Right. So you're basically, the parent is basically saying, I've decided for my child that this risk is worth the benefit. For the animal in the field, there's zero possible benefit. You're just fucking them. There's no benefit on the table. You're just crushing them because you want the plant and you don't care if they die.
Well,
It's not a comparable
again,
situation.
we're fine with people we're fine with people having ownership of things, right?
Yes.
Right. And it is a fact of ownership that you may have to kill to protect a resource, right?
Okay, so if you own a large preschool and there's a garden outside where the kids play, and you drive your car through there because it's easier to collect the plants that way and you mow over a few kids, are you committing a crime?
I don't
Yeah.
see how those are equivalent because in the case with the child, you can get them to move.
What if the kid's too stupid to move and there are
Okay,
too many of them?
too many? Well, again, are we talking about like a situation where there is no possible way to get them to move and they will always be in that field regardless of what you do.
You could get animals to leave fields. It would just make the cost of your groceries skyrocket. You just don't want to do it because it's
Well,
inconvenient for
right.
you.
It would end up okay, sure. So it would end
Right.
up being
Yeah,
so technologically difficult, so
right.
costly, you wouldn't be able to produce food.
Exactly. And you don't want to do that because you want to spend your money on a nice weight set and a nice computer. You don't want to pay more for food, even though it
Well,
might
it
make
wouldn't just
animals.
be paying more for food. It would end up being so costly that you literally wouldn't be able to afford food.
Okay, what if I said the cost of food doubled? You could still afford to live. You just wouldn't have as big of a house or as nice a stuff. But you don't want to do that.
Uh,
Nobody wants to do that.
well, well, I don't know why you would say that. If the cost of groceries would double, but there'd be absolutely no animal deaths, at least for me, that'd be worth it. Like, by the
Okay.
way, the cost of food used to be double. Like the majority of people's income was actually spent on groceries at one point, just because agriculture was so much less efficient.
I completely get that. But today, people, including me, I'm not saying I'm better, but even vegans, like everyone wants an iPhone and a big ass TV and a nice car and a big house. If you were willing to live in more primitive conditions,
I
you could
don't
kill way less
see
animals,
right. So like
but
this
you
is
don't really care
another
about it.
right. So this is another contentious issue. It's sort of like it's a little off track. I don't want to go too deep into it, but like I don't see a problem with technology even if it does end up causing like I don't know, the destruction of habitats and shit like that. Humans live far better lives and they get better and better because of
Okay.
technology. I don't have a
All laws.
problem with getting rid of wild habitat to increase human well-being and technological advancement.
Okay. So
Again, on the
all
aggregate,
I'm
you're going to see less deaths
this is
and more flourishing. So
okay.
like it's
If
not incompatible with a vegan worldview. But
if I had If someone said, option A, dude, you get to go live in this super chill place. You can have as much to eat as you want, but in 2 years from now, some guy's going to come put a bullet in your head. Or they said, you can live in this other place and life will be kind of rough, but one day someone's going to drive a giant piece of farm equipment through and crush you into bits and leave you to rot in a field. I would take option A. I would
oh,
want that for
okay.
myself.
I don't know what that has to do with what we're okay with granting with land ownership.
Those are the exact scenarios that we're debating. I think my version, raising a cow peacefully and then killing it on the last day, is way more humane than grinding up animals in a field and leaving their carcasses to rot on the ground.
Okay, so if I were to tell you I would much rather just go to some sort of camp where I just wait around and I don't know, maybe just quickly get put to death from getting shot in the back of the head, or if there was some sort of knockout gas that would like instantly kill me, that's preferable than dying in some like horrible fiery car wreck. Like that, I just don't see how that justifies the Holocaust. Again, we're okay with things like property rights. So like we're okay with somebody owning land.
I know. But what I'm
And
saying is,
we ran through the hypothetical where if we were to replace these animals with trade equalized human beings, we'd be okay with killing those human beings in the same way we kill animals harvesting plants. But there's a clear moral distinction between industrialized slaughter where we're breeding a being into existence for the purpose of killing versus having property, being able to work that property by tilling the soil, planting crops, harvesting the crops, and a number of animals dying or humans dying if we were to go with the like human trade equalized example.
yeah, I don't. I think our fundamental disagreement is all of the human Holocaust examples. I don't agree that they've been equivalent or analogous situations because again, you're comparing involuntary things to voluntary things. It's just not the same. In the animal case, they're both involuntary. Give me a human example where they're both involuntary, and then I think I will say, yeah, they're morally equivalent. Right? Transportation and Holocaust are not both voluntary. Transportation voluntary, Holocaust involuntary. make them the same.
Yeah, so humans don't voluntarily consent to getting their throats slit open. So you're making that decision for them. Animals don't consent to being run over by farm equipment. So
Correct.
so
I
so
agree with you.
so again, if we were to put humans in the same situation and trade equalize them to animals, what's morally preferable?
In my mind, the situation is Holocaust people and concentration camps, or put them in cars at gunpoint and say you have to drive through a minefield. Then I say
We're
they're
not,
equivalent. That's the
again, that's
comparable situation.
disanalogous. Again, that's
No, it is
completely
exactly
disanalogous.
analogous.
No, that's completely
Your
disanalogous.
situation is disanalogous because it's not voluntary. It is
No,
voluntary.
no, no, no. I literally just proposed the hypothetical that we replace all the animals in these situations with humans that are trait equalized. So rather than cows, you have humans that eat grass and are like
Then yes, I think
cognitively
it's the
equivalent to
same.
cows.
I think it's equivalent.
You think it's equivalent?
Yes, if you run over people's homes without their consent and crush them, that's just as bad as holocausting them.
Even in a situation where you own property and this is done so that you can use your property as you will,
Yes, if I own an
versus
apartment,
owning human beings as property,
if
breeding
I
them
own
continuously, and having an ongoing infinite holocaust on an industrial scale.
Yeah, if I own an apartment complex and I run over the buildings and crush the people inside, that's just as bad as a
That
Holocaust.
okay, so
It's the same
again, the
situation.
the problem here is how you propose these hypotheticals, because it's just
I'm actually making
misleading.
them analogous and you're
Well,
not.
you're not. The analogous situation would be, the people in the apartment buildings are like rats and they scurry around in little holes and you can't get them all out, but the apartment building has to be demolished for a new complex.
Okay, and then the comparison for the Holocaust would be the people doing the Holocausting are going to eat the victims and they need to eat something to survive, right? I'm not saying kill cows and let them rot. That's horrible. I
Right.
need,
So you're
you're
saying,
not making a comparable
oh, okay.
situation.
Well, let's go with that. So you're saying a Holocaust where you kill mentally disabled people and eat them is morally equivalent to demolishing an apartment building with rodent like people who run around in little holes and you can't capture them and get them out. So, like, the only option is to just demolish the building, with the rodent people inside.
But the rodent people are the same ones that are being holocausted and eaten, right?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
let's, like, at
then
the
it's
very
morally
least, we'll say they're like cognitively equivalent.
Well, you have to make it the same people in both scenarios to compare. If they're the same creatures, then yeah,
Well,
it's more.
I mean, you're saying there's no moral distinction between like a rabbit and a cow. Like, I'm sure
Correct.
there's cognitive differences there, but roughly they're like
Uh,
you,
Yes.
they're
If
close
it's
enough.
if it's Holocaust them and eat them, or it's run over the buildings that they live in, so you can get to some other food source and kill them along the way. Yes, those are morally equivalent.
Okay, I think that's absolutely fucking ridiculous. But I
I
don't
think killing
know.
people for your own personal gain is killing people for your own personal gain. Who cares what the method
Well,
is?
like, again, that idea just seems absolutely fucking ridiculous, because one, the goal isn't to turn a human being into some commodity and you're forcibly breeding them into existence just to kill them and eat them, versus, well,
Versus
you
running
just
over your
want
home.
to rebuild an apartment complex,
No, 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 no,
but you
no.
have this issue of rodent people living in the building and there's no possible way for you to get them out,
Oh,
without like killing them. So you just, like,
but
it's your
you don't have to
property, and you got to do what you got to do. Uh, like
But
like
you
I
don't
I
have.
like, look, if I can't really argue this any further. If you're gonna, if you like, I think we're at an impasse where we can't.
We are. Why
Yeah.
don't you go plant a garden and grow your own plants?
Like, I mean, I could, like, I could probably make
But it's
potatoes or
inconvenient.
something, or like tomatoes.
You could, so I don't know where you live, but my guess is you could probably significantly downsize your house, get a smaller, cheaper house that had a little chunk
I
of
can't.
land, grow your own food,
Yeah, I can't.
and you would harm a lot less animals that way. But you don't want to because it's
Well,
inconvenient. So
I
you don't really,
literally can't.
huh?
Well, I
Why not?
literally wouldn't be able to. Like,
Why?
one, I don't own the property I'm renting, and I don't
No,
know
no,
of
buy a
any.
new property.
Sorry.
You could buy a property.
Well, no. I wish. You know how much home prices are here?
You don't have to live in Toronto. Move out in
I'm
the
not
middle
in
of
Toronto.
Saskatchewan.
I'm in
Okay.
the middle of fucking nowhere.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
there are plenty of places.
even middle of nowhere, fucking Ontario, you're looking at like they're at least 500,000, like at least for like a shack that needs to be bulldozed. The home prices are fucking ridiculous.
My point is, lots of people could choose to do things that saved more animals, but humans, including me, I'm not saying I'm better than anyone else. Everyone values their own happiness and convenience, and so the moral high horse of, oh, I'm a vegan, so I'm a better person, and you're evil because you eat meat,
Well,
like
I certainly could do things that would save more animals, like kill people. If I gunned you down, if I committed a mass shooting, that would save animals.
killing yourself would save more animals because then you wouldn't be
Well,
taking up
sure.
resources
Well,
and ruining their
sure.
happiness.
That's
But you
not
won't be.
incompatible with a vegan worldview, though. Again, the idea of a so like you can point this out, but it doesn't point out some sort of contradiction with my worldview. It like again, I think humans should, or sorry, I think animals should just have the same rights as human beings if we were to trade equalize human beings. So we're fine with human beings causing harm to other human beings. Like
Well,
driving a
yeah,
car produces pollution, which contributes to global warming, and
I think.
that's affecting human beings. Even like just some of the pollution that's created by
What I would say
driving
is
a
your whole
car that
thing,
does harm
your whole
humans.
thing about trait equalizing, if you trait equalize humans and animals, they're not humans anymore. They're
Well,
just
no,
animals.
they would be humans. We're not equalizing literally every trait where a human is now not a human
No,
and a rabbit.
just the ones that you
We're
like that are convenient.
equalizing. Yeah, so we're equalizing the traits that we care about, morally. So
Okay,
like
so you
cognitive.
selectively choose traits that you care about to skew the argument in your favor. We don't want to normalize all traits, just the ones that I say. That's
Well,
inconsistent.
I don't.
It's like
Well, I don't know how we. Well, I don't know how we could create a situation where we normalize all traits, because
exactly.
then we're not talking
You're
about comparing humans and animals. We're just talking about animals.
And exactly. That's my point, is you're selectively cherry picking the traits that help your argument and
No,
ignoring all the ones that don't
no,
help
I'm
your
not
argument.
selecting the traits that help my argument. I'm selecting the traits that I care about. So I care about
Which
sentience. I
is
care about like
which is
cognitive
subjective.
capacity. Maybe like how long a creature lives.
Okay. And I'm
Like
willing to
that's
say
another aspect.
if a human has the exact cognitive capacity of a rabbit, I don't care about whether they live or die.
Okay. Let's say there was an alien species that had the same cognitive capacity as a human being. Would you be okay with killing and eating them? So
Um,
let's say we encountered like Star Trek aliens. What's the ones with the pointy ears? The Vulcans.
only if they posed a threat to me. If they're not going to
Well,
harm me, there's nothing.
let's just say they spoke English. They could totally assimilate in human society. They had the same social norms. Like everything about them was the same. They're just not human. They're Vulcans. Like you wouldn't be okay with
That
killing and eating them.
no, I would not.
Yeah. So like I think you agree with me. Like the traits we
No,
care
no, no, that's
about
the
are
opposite of
things. Yeah. So the traits we care about are things like intelligence, maybe sapience.
Not the one claiming moral superiority here. It's the burden of proof isn't on
Well,
me, it's on you.
we're not
You're
talking about any moral superiority between diets. We're taught like you were criticizing me, saying that I'm just cherry picking traits that would somehow help my argument. I'm pointing out
I
that no, and you agree with me fundamentally. So like there are certain traits that you care about in certain creatures, like some of those being intelligence, sentience, maybe sapience, how long a creature lives, and all this crap. I think for the most part, we agree on the value of the same traits. Like, you don't seem to care about DNA in and of itself because we just, had the Vulcan hypothetical where the Vulcan is not a human being.
Yes, I do care about traits like human intelligence and sentience. You're saying that you care so much about animals that don't have those traits. Whereas I'm saying I'm fine with treating animals differently than humans because they don't have the same traits. That's my whole point.
Well, they do have intelligence. They do have sentience. It's just that
You
if
don't,
so,
how do you define that?
they do have like they don't have the same extent of traits, but they do have the same traits, sentience and I really primarily care about sentience. It's not so much intelligence.
How do you define sentience?
Well, the ability to have a subjective experience. There are hypothetically sentient animals or sentient creatures that I wouldn't give moral consideration to. So, like if a creature could only experience blue, hypothetically, if that were the possibility. So they can't experience
But
well being, they can't experience suffering. So, like, I wouldn't really care about that sort of experience, like just being able to see the color blue. So I care about things like being able to experience well being, being able to experience suffering, maybe caring about your own existence.
yeah,
Like
I I
those are things that I value, and
care about
most
those things,
animals
which
seem to
is
be like have that basic level of sentience that I care about, similar to human beings.
I care about those things too, which is why I find people that torture or kill animals for no good reason, I find them horrific. Like I despise those people. I would kill them myself.
Well,
But nobody
yeah.
can live without harming another species. You can't do it.
Well,
No
you can't.
species can live.
Well, I would argue to this, like, maybe not to the same degree, but I would argue that you can't live without, like, harming a human being. You're going to hurt somebody's feelings. You might incidentally end up causing, like, some sort of accident where somebody gets a boo boo, skins their knee. Maybe you're at the skate park and you bump into somebody. Yeah, to some extent, like, you're not going to be able to live through your life without harming other human beings. Like,
Fine with that.
we're okay with causing some amount of harm, but again, the most robust kind of moral system that we agree upon is like the moral system that we created in our own society, that is based on human rights. So I just see veganism as a logical extension of human rights, the same rights we give to human beings. I think we should extend to animals if they were to be trade equalized to human beings.
What would you do
So
if an herbivore tried to kill you? Like gorillas are herbivores. What if a gorilla tried to kill you? Would you
well, yeah,
shoot
I'd
it or
shoot
would
and
you
kill
let
it.
it go?
I'd shoot and kill a human being who tried to kill me.
Okay, so you do care about yourself more than animals.
No, that's not. It's not about animals. It's about me caring about myself more than anyone else.
Okay.
So,
All right, man. Well, I'm
again,
over.
if a kid had a gun, and I'm not talking about a toy gun. I knew a kid had a gun and they're shooting it at me. I'd shoot the kid.
Sure, I think most people would.
Yeah. So, like, do you? Oh, so you don't care about human beings? Like, no, you do care about human beings. It's just that you care more about yourself than someone else.
Okay. Would if a gorilla was trying to kill a random human, would you shoot the gorilla or would you let the gorilla kill the human?
Depends on the human.
Okay, yeah, if they're a vegan or not, right?
Yeah, that'd be a big aspect of it.
Yeah.
Like, to be fair, there are some vegans that I just don't like. Maybe I'd let them kill the like let the gorilla kill them.
All right, man. Well, we've been doing this for a while. Like, are we still going or are we at a stalemate here?
Well, so I think we're at an impasse with like basically premise one, where you're basically arguing that there's no moral distinction between, killing in the interest of like protecting property, so like pesticide use, versus killing through like industrial slaughter. I made my argument. You made your argument. I think we're at an impasse there. I think just some of the empirical claims you made, maybe we can argue about that, where there would be like, a roughly equivalent amount of deaths that occur in a farm field versus like a slaughterhouse or something. Therefore, there's no moral distinction between eating meat versus getting food from a farm. I think some of those empirical claims may be misleading. We could maybe talk about that.
Well, and like I said, I'm not defending factory farming. We agree that that's
Well,
just the worst.
sure.
Horrible.
We could just make the comparison with like grass fed or something.
Yeah, so that's my like honestly in my mind, if you wanted to kill the least number of animals possible for your food, the least number possible would be to kill one whale, freeze the meat, and live off of it for the rest of your life and then some. You could feed multiple people for their entire lives with one whale. But I realize that's taking it like ad absurdum. But that kind of is
Um,
ultimately harm caused if you care about animal life. And I don't know why a whale is worth more than a mouse.
well, I know with whaling, there was a lot of products that were made from whales. So, like whale oil, I know that was used in industrial machinery for a while, like steam engines, stuff like that.
But but whales kill other animals. They're predators, so you don't really care
Well,
about them
they
anyway, do you?
kill krill. I'm not sure if they're sentient. Um,
They have nervous systems. They respond to pain.
well, I don't know if they're sentient.
Yeah, but you
Having a
don't really
nervous
know for
system
sure if a
isn't.
cat is sentient or not.
Sorry.
You're just assuming. Then you don't really know for
Well,
sure that any.
there's good indication that some crustaceans are not sentient. Like certain, I know there's certain species of shrimp where there's good indication that they're not sentient. I think it's generally agreed upon that crabs are sentient, even though they have like a very primitive form of brain, if you could even call it that. They have like a very large cluster of nerve
Okay.
ganglia.
So curiosity, like we're beyond, I'm beyond being like worked up about things. Like I'm really curious. If I could say, all right, I'm gonna genetically engineer some subspecies of pig that wasn't sentient. It was basically just a flesh robot. And it couldn't think, couldn't feel, didn't have a nervous system that even like barely functioned other than keeping its heart and lungs going. And I raised them and killed them and they never felt any pain. Would you be cool with that?
Well, yeah, if they're not sentient.
Yeah. Okay. Not just
Yeah,
curiosity.
obviously.
I don't think we actually disagree all that much, man. Like it's in my
Well,
mind, like,
yeah, I think we agree with, like, in a general sense, that animals have some moral value. It would be ideal to not kill any of them, if that were at all possible. So, like, I don't know if there was, like, some sort of way of lab grown meat plus maybe harvesting plants in some sort of indoor setting. You could have like meat, and the growth medium that you're using, it's actually collected from some sort of process where no animals had to be killed. And if you do want to eat plants, again, it's like indoor agriculture. Like, sure, like I think we agree on a very
yeah.
fundamental level. Like, it seems that where we disagree is that these deaths are morally equivalent, which we've already gone through. Like, to me, I think it's just bizarre to say like a literal holocaust is equivalent to, say, like bulldozing a building filled with rodent people. Um,
Well, if you're holocausting rodent people, though, I would say it's equivalent.
well,
Anyway,
yeah,
we can go back there. We've already been through it.
yeah,
My point is,
we've already been through that, and I think we disagree with some of the empirical claims where like there's a comparable number of deaths in plant agriculture to animal agriculture, or at least in some circumstances. Like, if you have say a cow pasture, um, you are going to have animal deaths that incidentally occur, not just the animals themselves. So
well,
you like these cows are going to step on bugs, like small rodents and stuff like that. Sometimes they even eat bugs and small rodents just incidentally from mowing the grass. Oftentimes you are going to have to periodically feed them grain, just because of like environmental conditions and stuff like that. You are going to have transport. So you are going to have to transport feed. You
I
are
agree.
going to have to transport certain products. Like, if they're B12 deficient, you are going to have to like transport some medical stuff and stuff like that. You are going to have to
So,
transport them to the slaughterhouse, which is going to end up killing animals. Like
so
I
my
know,
my big picture worldview is no matter how humans live their life, you are doing it at the expense of other animals. You can't have a, you can't live a life that is completely free of causing suffering and harm to many, many other species. And
sure.
so, you know, what if
Well,
it's not? What if it's industrial? What if
here's
it's what if I
well.
hunt a deer in the wild?
Sorry.
What if instead of like you don't like the idea of like keeping it captive, raising it just for meat? What if I like my backyard is basically just a forest? What if I walk out the back with my rifle and just shoot a deer?
Yeah, cool. What if
Then I
I
didn't
were
raise it.
well? There's a neighborhood with lots of kids walking around. Like, what if I just go out and shoot a kid and eat him?
I mean I fundamentally disagree with the idea that humans and animals should have equal rights. So like we're stuck on that one.
Well,
The thing
you
I
do agree with the idea of reducing harm, right? So if I kill the kid, he can't go to McDonald's and buy factory farm meat. So that'd be okay for you, right? If I kill the kid.
No, because I don't think humans and animals are equivalent morally, right?
Right,
I
but
killed a deer.
okay, so do you have a problem with people torturing and killing animals? So like if somebody was torturing their cat, would you be okay with me killing them?
Um, yeah, if they're really sadistic about it, I wouldn't care. I'm not going to get involved in it. But yeah, if you kill someone who's an
Right, so
animal
you'd
torturer,
be
I would.
fairly indifferent with me killing somebody who tortures animals.
Yeah, they're a piece of shit. Go ahead.
Okay, so most people pay for animals to be tortured, so you're okay with me killing most people?
Ooh, okay, explain yourself.
Well, most people buy factory farm meat. So if you buy, like, if you go to McDonald's and buy chicken nuggets or, a Big
Right, but
Mac.
that's my point is I think that you pay for animals to be tortured too when you buy your produce
Well,
because they're being
you
ground to
like,
pieces under the tires of large farm equipment.
I don't see how that's an actual form of torture.
You
Um,
don't being run over by a giant ass tractor and ground into pieces to rot in a field is not torture. What's wrong with you?
so
In
would
your own
you,
hole?
right, so would you consider it torture if I accidentally, like, ran over a human being? Like, there's a certain amount of human beings who are going to get run over on the road. That's just a given, and it's just because humans aren't perfect at driving. There's going to be instances with inclement weather where you're not necessarily at fault. You may be distracted when driving and see some chick with huge tits, and then, oh no, I didn't see the red light, and then you run somebody over. That is guaranteed to happen. So,
Right, but
like, are
that's
we,
like the
like, again,
hinterland
are we saying, oh, well, you've committed the exact same sort of atrocity as kidnapping a human being, hanging them upside down, slitting their throats open?
I think so. In my mind, the analogous scenario is you go into an area where humans live that's not a roadway, and you drive through it with a very large vehicle and mow them down before they can get out of the way. Then, yes, I think it's just as bad.
Well, again, you like I gave you a situation where you say like violated a social contract. People expect you to pay attention when driving. You weren't. You were looking down at your phone, or you saw a girl with huge tits. You didn't see the red light, and you ran somebody over.
And you should be
Is
prosecuted for that.
well, yeah, you should, but like, is it morally equivalent to kidnapping somebody, hanging them upside down, slitting their throat open?
See, the thing that I disagree with is, again, in the animal case, you have to choose one or the other or you'll die. In your example with humans, you don't have to choose one or
Well,
the other or you die. You
you
can do
also
neither.
didn't have to drive. You didn't have to drive while distracted.
You don't have to drive distracted and you don't have to kill people. You don't have to do either of those things. With animals and plants, you have to eat one or the other. You
Well, you
have to
don't.
make a
Well,
choice.
in theory, you could
Yes,
kill
you do.
yourself,
Okay, well if you're
but
putting suicide on the table, then that's I guess that's the
but
kind of
like the
the end
point
of the debate.
being, uh, you know, X hypothetical person doesn't have to pay for factory farm meat, right? So they're going out of their way to pay for animals to be tortured. So,
Right, and you're
given
going
that
out of your
scenario, would you be okay with me killing your average person at McDonald's?
you don't have to eat factory farmed plants, but you pay for them knowing the farmers kill a lot of
Well,
animals.
I don't know about that. If we're talking about not having to eat industrial agriculture, like, I mean, we could assume some amount of hypothetical people don't necessarily have to, but on a population scale, absolutely.
I agree with that. I
So,
don't know.
so again, if we have this principle of people who torture animals are pieces of shit, I'm indifferent to whether or not you kill them. So, if there's people who go out of their way to buy factory farm meat when clearly they don't have to, I on a population scale, no one has to eat factory farm meat. There's enough food resource where that's just not necessary. So, would you be indifferent of me like shooting up a McDonald's?
I disagree. Well, No, I think that people have to eat. I think worldwide, if you deleted all animal products, people would start starving to death and
We're not
dying from
talking
protein.
about deleting, so we're not talking about worldwide all animal products. We're specifically talking about, say, United States factory farming specifically.
Okay, what's the exact question now?
So since you're indifferent to me killing somebody who's like torturing an animal, um, well, people are
Oh,
paying for animals to be
yeah.
tortured through factory farming. Would you be indifferent to me shooting up a McDonald's? Not, and I'm not saying I'm going to do that, just in
Again,
case on YouTube.
I don't respect the comparison because there is a survival purpose tied to killing the animals in factory farming. There's no survival
Well, there
necessity for shooting.
isn't because people go to McDonald's to eat tasty food, not to survive. So I see a big distinction there. Like
No,
nobody
I'm
goes to
saying that
McDonald's thinking like I'm gonna die. Well, again, if McDonald's were literally the only food source, like maybe you can make that argument. But they're going out of their way specifically to buy a factory farm product, which
right,
we
but when you
know
buy plants,
tortures animals.
you realize like plants are also factory farmed.
Yes, we
And
understand that.
those factory farms go to great lengths to kill rodents that inhabit their fields on purpose, not incidentally. They
Right,
poison
but
them, they shoot
they're
them.
right,
Well,
but they're not breeding rodents and then putting them in tight confined spaces and then pumping them full of growth hormones, antibiotics that make them grow at a ridiculously fast rate that causes them
and
constant pain and suffering until they
I
die.
have I have told you that I despise that as well. I'm not arguing in favor of that. What
So
about my
some of
happy
these,
cow, my
yeah,
grass?
so some of these animal deaths that occur with industrial agriculture, like farming corn, they're like they may not be pleasant deaths, but saying that it's torture I think is misleading. That like it might be a painful death in some way, but it's not
Okay,
literal
you realize
torture like factory
does,
farming.
does the word rodenticide make sense? Poison that kills rodents?
Well, we use poison to kill rodents in animal agriculture, and that includes pasture raised animals. That's especially true in
and
Australia because they have the
and
mouse plagues.
plant agriculture.
Sorry.
You buy plants from farmers who poison rodents to keep them away from your
Right,
crops.
and they do that in animal agriculture too. So I don't see how that's a
So
unique
you're no,
aspect of animal plant agriculture.
that's exactly my point is you're not on a moral high ground here. You're equivalent. You're
Well,
paying
no,
for
I would still be on a moral high ground because even if both industries are killing rodents in the same way, well, you're not also killing animals, and making them like the
okay.
product. So cow
Beginning of
plus
all
rodent versus corn plus rodent.
at the beginning of all of this, you said that it's about rights, it's not about a numbers game. But now you're the one making it a numbers game, saying, "Oh, but I do less of it."
Well, we're taught. Well, so
Using
we've already gone through premise one. We're at an impasse, and now I'm kind of giving pushback against premise two,
Okay,
because
no. Hold on. Is it about numbers or is it an absolute right and wrong?
well, we've already gone through premise one. That was my main argument that I wanted to focus on. So for me, it is rights, but we can argue like premise two, basically.
Okay.
Like
Well,
like
are we
for
still?
for me,
We keep going
premise one,
2 hours.
for me, premise one is the more important argument. Because like I have a more fundamental disagreement with you on that level. Like I can agree that at least in some circumstances you might end up causing less animal harm eating meat versus eating plants. But I would say generally speaking, at least when you're talking about industrialized agriculture, that probably isn't the case.
I agree with you. I think we're on the
Okay.
same page. I
Yeah.
agree for someone that eats like shitty factory farm meat from Walmart, they're causing more harm than you, right? I'm just saying you can't say with some absolute veganism is always the best answer and like omnivorism is always worse than
Yeah.
that.
So
So
right. So again, we've already covered premise one. I do see a big moral distinction between intentional industrialized killing versus the type of killing that happens using pesticides or harvesting crops. You disagreed with
pretty
that.
industrial and
I
conventional, man.
ran through I we ran through all the hypotheticals. that would be my basis for saying veganism is always like, well, unless you come up with crazy hypotheticals that don't actually exist. So, like, if eating a carrot would infinitely cause suffering and death to an infinite amount of galaxies versus only eating steak would only kill cows. Killing cows in that situation would obviously be the more superior, like morally superior choice. But like in circumstances that actually exist on like real planet Earth, that would be the
Yeah, I
basis
think
for
like
why I'd say veganism is always morally superior.
in my mind, what I'm saying is if I take an entire cow, butcher it, cut it up, put it in my freezer, and I count up total number of calories that I get out of it, I think that you're going to have a hard time going to a standard grocery store and buying that many calories worth of plants and have less animals killed in the process. If you're buying factory farm
You,
meat, then no, I don't think
yeah,
that at
so
all.
I would push back against that because you're killing more than one cow to produce a cow, or you're killing other animals too.
The cow might by stepping on them, and maybe like just the couple
Well,
miles to
that
drive.
would be considered, one of those incidental deaths. So
I think that it's way
you bred the
fewer
cow
deaths.
into existence, and that's the product you're making. And if the cow ends up killing any other animals by stepping on
I'll
them,
just
accidentally eating them, so
I'll just tell
there,
you
like
by
by the way, there is competition involved. Cows do push out other herbivores, so like deer. They do compete for some of the same resources, like some of the same forage
I,
crops.
I, I don't disagree.
There's
What I'm saying is,
transportation
yeah,
involved. Animals are going to die in transportation. If the cows are being fed any amount of grain throughout the year, which can happen with even with cows on pasture. Well, that corn had to be raised in a field that was like plowed by a human being and so forth. So there's more than just one cow dying. I think you're going to have a hard time making an argument that more
I,
animals would die in the plant agriculture setting, considering how insanely productive plant agriculture is. You can produce way more calories per unit of land versus animal agriculture. So
is
I think you'd have a hard time making that argument.
the best argument that I have, like nobody can measure the exact number of animals per unit of food. Like it's not really possible. But I grew up on a farm that was a mix of cropland where we grew corn, soybeans, alfalfa, and pasture land where cows were raised. All I
Alfalfa
know
is technically considered a forage crop, so if you fed an animal alfalfa, that would still be considered grass fed.
we didn't feed it to our cows. We sold it to
Well,
other
yeah,
farms. But yes,
yeah.
my point is all the pesticides got sprayed on the crops, right? All of the rodenticides got applied to the crops. The cows in the pasture, we just let them roam and do their thing. And so I'm not saying I know the exact numbers. I just don't think it's as bad as you think. But
Well,
I don't think we disagree about enough at this point where it makes sense to keep going around in circles on this shit. So it's up to you. But
yeah. So the final point I would make is I don't think you have a particularly good case to say that like ideal farming circumstances like cows raised on a pasture would be morally ideal over buying like plant foods, so like stuff that I eat like tofu, potatoes, berries like blueberries. Just because I don't think there's a strong case to be made that far like any substantially fewer animals die when you're talking about cows raised on pasture versus the consumption of those food crops.
okay.
Just because,
Yeah, and
like,
all
again, plant farming is just so efficient. You produce so much food so efficiently on a smaller unit of land. Chances are the math works out in favor of the plant agriculture. I think
most
where
of the time
you
I agree with
may, I think where you may be able to make an argument is with like hunting wild game, where maybe you'd be able to make an argument that fewer animals end up dying in that circumstance. But the argument I would use there is I see a huge moral distinction between gunning a sentient being down intentionally to use them as some sort of food commodity versus you owning a piece of land and making food on that piece of land, and in order to protect that property, you may have to use pesticides, or there may be some animal deaths that occur from you harvesting those plants. I see a huge moral distinction there. We ended up
I don't.
disagreeing, and I think you ended up like like from my perspective, people can make their own moral judgment. Like there's no objective basis to prove any kind of moral claim or moral statement. So people can make their own
So,
judgment if they think your position's silly or not.
yeah, and what I'll leave it with is like, and this is genuine. Like, I'm not trying to be a dick with this. I wish that people in the vegan community would direct like more focused in a way that's more focused, direct your rage towards factory farming, mistreatment of animals, horrific conditions that truly are awful, and I agree with you. And like maybe back off of the absolutism of anyone that eats any animal product is just evil, because there are people that really do care and are trying to like the guy that I buy my meat from, he's a good dude. He treats his animals incredibly well and like he genuinely wants to reduce suffering as much as possible, and lumping all people that eat meat into like you're a terrorist that deserves to die. It's just like, man, can't we all get on the same team and say like factory farming misery camps are the real problem here? That's my stance on it. I realize you don't completely agree with me,
I
but
think if you talk to any vegans who would have that position, they're cucked pussies. Like there were slave owners back in the days of slavery that would advocate for slavery on the same basis. Well, we're actually doing a favor to black people because, not a lot of people know this, but most of the slaves that came from Africa to America, they were actually slaves in Africa.
I know.
There were African slave lords that would sell their slaves to white Europeans and Americans. So they would make the case that, well, we're actually helping them. They live a better life here than they would in Africa as a slave. And rather than, having this pro slavery abolition mindset, well, we should just buy more slaves from Africa, but like treat the slaves here better and like punish slave masters that are really mean to their slaves and whip them and do all these horrible things. So it
I
would
see
be a
your point.
win-win if we had
But
more slavery, but we treated our slaves well.
I see.
Like the fundamental idea of owning a human being is morally reprehensible, just like the fundamental idea that you can just decide to end the life of a sentient being that otherwise would want to live and would benefit from living just because you like the taste of their flesh.
And again, my point is you don't have to own slaves. It's not a you
And
have to
you don't
like
have to eat meat.
you have to eat something.
Yeah, and you could eat tofu and potatoes like me, be a jacked fucking vegan, and live life and be healthy and all that shit,
And if
and you
yeah,
wouldn't have to
if
kill
you
as many
didn't
animals.
if you didn't need to be so big and jacked, you could eat less food and cause more animal suffering, but you don't want to do that because you would rather be huge and eat more food and have more animals
Goddamn
suffer
right.
because.
Yeah,
Yep.
again, and I could buy less products, and then I don't know, maybe less people would have to work a shitty job at an Amazon warehouse packing shelves. But again, it just comes down to what we're okay with in terms of human rights. And if we're okay with getting Amazon delivery drivers and factory workers to stock shelves faster because we want to buy shit on Amazon, then I think we should also have a right to eat more food and get fucking jacked.
Yeah, well, people could decide to quit their job at Amazon. The animal can't decide that it doesn't need to live in your field. Anyway, we should be done. I appreciate the whole thing staying civil and respectful.
Yeah.
So,
Maybe another
all right.
time I'll see if Ask Yourself wants to debate you. I think you mentioned at one point you wanted to debate Ask Yourself.
You may have heard that
He's
from Vito.
Isaac.
I don't know the guy, but yeah, consider it.
Yeah, all right.
Cool.
All right, we'll
All
take care,
right.
dude.
Yep. Catch you later.
Well, that was dumb. Dumb, 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 dumb. Highly, highly dumb. Let's see. Spooky.
What's the guest's name? My friend Kathy wants to know.
I can't fucking remember now. He said his name at the beginning of the debate. I literally can't remember now. I'm a little sleep deprived. I only got like 2 hours of sleep last night. I think it has a D in it. Darren or something, maybe. I can't remember. Thanks for the donation, Spooky. Well, he ended up biting the bullet, basically, that Holocaust is the same as car accidents, which is kind of what I expected. And again, he did not make a good case for the idea that fewer animals are harmed in agriculture. So, making meat. So I would say that's a W for me, but as is often the case, it can be hard to convince idiots. So, no keyboard smashing. I kept my cool. Anyway, hope you all had fun. I'll be streaming later tonight. Not sure exactly when yet, but I will be streaming later tonight. So I'll see you all then, probably just in a few hours. Big thanks to everybody who donated in Streamlabs, which I think was just one person, but thanks anyway, and I'll see you all later tonight.